Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Appreciate you coming and checking it out. And if you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. What I have for you today is a few accounts that I'm going to go ahead and read to you. I found these very interesting. One is from the 1960s in Kootenai, British Columbia. Another one is from the 1870s in California. And if you guys know anything about my channel, I really like the old time encounters with these creatures. And I also like the Native American legends of these creatures. Speaking of, wait until the end of the video, and I have some news on that coming up. But before we get into these accounts, check this out for me. Today's video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. And if you guys don't know, WILLSTAR is also a gamer. And lately I've been playing Raid Shadow Legends a lot. This is a true console level experience on your phone. They've really set the bar high on this one. In-game, there are millions of champion combinations that you can master, and you go through dungeons, campaign battles, PvP, arena matches, hundreds of artifacts to equip, and you can develop your own champions and raid your way through the Shadowlands. Two of the champions that I've been using since I've been playing are Ithos, he's a legendary champion, and Royal Guard, he's an epic champion. Both of them are very aggressive attack style characters, and that's the way I like to play. But there are all kinds of different characters that you could select, such as a reviver. There's a reviver named Raglan. You could also play as her. There's a lot of characters to pick from and a lot of combinations. So I'll tell you, Raid puts out a lot of new content all the time, and there's a ton happening in Raid this month, with new champions, an update to the tag arena, and a full schedule of special events and tournaments. But the main event? Raid is currently running a special Deliana Chase event where you can get your hands on the amazing Deliana, a brand new legendary champion from the High Elves faction, just by logging in. All you have to do is log in and play Raid for 7 days between now and July 20th, and you'll get Deliana for free. That's it. Deliana is one of the strongest support champions in the entire game, and you guys definitely need her to help your team get past many of Raid's tougher challenges. You don't want to miss out on her. And I'll tell you what, the gifts keep on coming to all new players for 30 days. Listen up, once you're in game, just enter the promo code MyDeliana to get your hands on everything. Simple. Get 50 XP brews to instantly get your legendary hero Deliana to max level 50, as well as a ton of silver. So you may ask, when's the best time to get started in Raid? And let me tell you, the best time is today. And if you click my link in the description or scan my QR code here on the screen, you'll get a free starter pack worth almost $40. We're talking 3 free champions at once: Misericord, Tiger Soul, and Romero, plus 10 Magic XP brews, 10 Force XP brews, 10 Spirit brews. That's huge. They only gave one champion in the past. Don't miss your last chance to get such big rewards. All this treasure will be waiting for you here, and it's that easy. Just click the link in the description, and I'll see you in the game. Really quickly, before we get into these encounters, I'm going to show you these locations so you guys can go ahead and keep up with the encounters as I give them. First one's going to be right here on Lemon Creek. The gentleman talks about Lemon Creek, and that is right there. And his encounter is going to be right down in... Well, first of all, I'm going to show you another lake that he talks about, and that's going to be 6 Mile Lake, right there. But he is up here by the lake called SASQUATCH Lake. I don't know if it was called that back then or if they named that after his encounter, but that is where his story is going to happen. Let me get you to the next one. Okay, the next location is going to be right here at Pequan, California. Now, this next account is going to be from Native American author Lucy Thompson, and Lucy Thompson lived in this area right here. So this is going to be the area of this account, but she doesn't give an exact location. She just gives where she grew up. So I'll show you guys that location during the story, and let's get to the third one. And the third account is going to be right here in the Crow Spring Canyon area in California. This is the one that occurred in 1870s. So that's going to be this area right here. And he doesn't give very many details besides telling about the canyon and a creek, and at the end he mentions another place that I'll show you. But that's the third place. So let's go ahead and get into these accounts. Whatever it was that sent John Bringsley of Nelson fleeing in blind panic from the head of Lemon Creek, hurling his huckleberry pail into the bush, and racing home in his early model car, it had pulled a speedy disappearing act by the time he and a group of hunters returned to the scene. Mr. Bringsley, a woodsman, hunter, and fisherman in Kootenai district for more than 35 years, swore on his reputation as an outdoorsman that it was definitely not a bear. In an interview, Mr. Bringsley related his experience with an unknown creature seen while on a huckleberry picking expedition alone near 6 Mile, and unashamedly told of his frantic race over 100 yards of stunted brush and underbrush to his car. I had just stopped my 1931 coupe on a deserted logging road a couple of weekends ago and walked about 100 yards into the bush. I was picking huckleberries. I had just started to pick berries and was moving slowly through the bush. I had only been there about 15 minutes. For no particular reason, I glanced up, and that is when I saw this great beast. It was standing about 50 feet away on a slight rise in the ground, just staring at me. The sight of this animal paralyzed me. It was 7 to 9 feet tall, with long legs and long, powerful arms with hair covering its body. The first thing I thought was, what a strange-looking bear. It had very wide shoulders and a flat face with ears flat against the side of his head. It looked more like a big, hairy ape. It just stood there, staring at me. Arms of the animal were slightly bent, and most astounding was that it had hands, not claws. It was about 8 a.m., and I could see it very clearly. Most peculiar thing about it was the strange bluish-gray tinge of color of its long hair. It had no neck. Its ape-like head appeared to be fastened directly to its wide shoulders. Mr. Bringsley stood with mouth agape, staring at the thing for about 2 minutes. Then it began slowly to walk, or rather shuffle, towards the paralyzed huckleberry picker. It was then that Mr. Bringsley decided it was time for him to find another berry-picking location. He sprinted to the car and drove recklessly down the old logging road and home. Bringsley returned to the scene the next day with a group of friends armed with high-powered rifles and cameras, but the strange beast did not reappear. They did find one track nearby. It was from 16 to 17 inches long. There were no claw marks, but rather a sharp toe print as described by Bringsley. When asked if he would return to that area again, he retorted, "Of course, but this time I'll take along the old 30-06, just for good luck." All right, so there you folks go. What do you guys think about that? In Kootenai, British Columbia. Imagine that, being out there picking some huckleberries, stumbling into something like that, 7 to 9 feet tall. The thing could rip you in half if it wanted to. Let's be honest about it. So now I'm going to give you a little bit from Native American author Lucy Thompson. Now, Lucy was born October 29th, 1856 in the Pequon village in Northern California. She passed away in 1932, but before she did, she wrote several books that were very much acclaimed. One of them was called To the American Indian. And in the book, Chapter 9, she has a chapter called The Indian Devil. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of that. And it's quite interesting coming from the Native American perspective about what these creatures are and what their legends say they are. So let's go ahead and get into it. The Klamath Indians, in bringing down their legends from the creation of man until the present day, say that some were made to be good and honorable, some bad, and some were real bad and mean, which they termed devils, or Omaha. We have the conception of the invisible Satan, and a real living devil such as walks the earth, and we fear them as they will harm us if they get the opportunity. We have had these living Indian devils all through the long and weary centuries, ever since the creation of mankind, such devils as we find in every race and nations on the earth. Our Indian devils are Indians, who, for some reason or cause, leave the tribe and go far away into the lonely mountains and into the depths of the forest, where they live near the streams and places almost inaccessible. In their loneliness, they roam through the forest and over the mountains like some wild animals of prey. They forget the language of their mothers and become something like wild beasts, fleeing from the sight of human beings. In olden times, the women especially were always careful to keep together on their camping trips when they were gathering the acorn crop, grass seeds, pine nuts, etc., for fear of these Indian devils. These Indian devils would sometimes watch the camps of the Indians very closely and follow them about as they moved from place to place, watching for an opportunity to seize one of the young women and carry her off to make her his wife. If a young woman strayed away too far by herself, she was often made a captive by one of these devils. The women of the tribe had great fear of them, as they had great horrors of becoming the wife of a wild man. Sometimes the women would be captured by the Indian devils and would be gone away from the tribe for years. When they would return and tell of their wild life and experiences, they would become the mother of children, and the children would inherit the wild habits of their father, as they would always be whistling, making strange noises, romping wildly about, and always on the go, roaming everywhere in the wilds. These women were never happy when they came back to their people, as after a time they would long to go back to their devil husbands and children. They always managed to get away and return to the old wild life, as it held such a fascination for them when they once experienced the wilds that they could not resist the calling of such a life. When the Indians would go on their hunting and camping trips into the mountains, as soon as they heard an owl screech or hoots, they would stop and listen. And try to distinguish if it was an Indian devil imitating the owl or the cry of a wild animal. The Indians would stop at once, kindle a fire, and holloa. This was given as a warning to the devils that they were awake and ready to fight them if necessary. Alright, so let's get on to this next report from 1870 in the Weekly Butte Record. I saw in your paper a short time since an item concerning the gorilla, which was said to have been seen in Crow Canyon and shortly after in the mountains at Aristimba Creek. You sneered at the idea of there being any such critter in these hills, and were I not better informed, I should sneer too, or else conclude that one of your recent prospecting party had got lost in the wilderness and did not have the sense enough to find his way back to Terry's. I positively assure you that this gorilla, or wild man, or whatever you choose to call it, is no myth. I know that it exists, and that there are at least two of them, having seen them both at once not a year ago. Their existence has been reported at times for the past 20 years, and I have heard it said that in the early days an orangutan escaped from a ship on the southern coast, but the creature I have seen is not that animal. If it is, where did he get his mate? Import her, as the Webfoot did their wives? What? Last fall, I was hunting in the mountains about 20 miles south of here and camped 5 or 6 days in one place, as I have done every season for the past 15 years. Several times I returned to camp after a hunt and saw that the ashes and charred sticks from the fireplace had been scattered about. An old hunter notices such things and very soon gets curious to know the cause. Although my bedding and traps and little stores were not disturbed, as I could see, I was anxious to learn who or what it was that was so regularly visiting my camp. For clearly the half-burnt sticks and cinders could not scatter themselves about. I saw no tracks near the camp, as the hard ground covered with leaves would show none. So I started in a circle around the place, and 300 yards off, in a damp sand, I struck the track of a man's feet, as I supposed, bare and of immense size. Now I was curious for sure, and I resolved to lay for the barefooted visitor. I accordingly took a position on a hillside about 60 or 70 feet from the fire, and securely hid in the brush. I waited and watched. 2 hours or more I sat there and wondered if the owner of the feet would come again, and whether he imagined what an interest he had created in my inquiring mind, and finally what possessed him to be prowling about there with no shoes on. The fire spot was on my right, and the spot where I saw the track was on my left, hid by the bushes. It was in this direction my attention was mostly directed, thinking the visitor would appear there, and besides, it was easier to sit and face that way. Suddenly, I was startled by a shrill whistle, such as boys produce with 2 fingers under their tongue. Turning quickly, I exclaimed, "Good God!" as I saw the object of my solitude standing beside my fire, erect and looking suspiciously around. It was in the image of a man, but it could not have been human. I was never so benumbed with astonishment before. The creature, whatever it was, stood fully 5 feet high and disproportionately broad and square at the foreshoulders with arms of great length. The legs were very short and the body long. The head was small compared with the rest of the creature, and appeared to be set upon its shoulders without a neck. The whole was covered with dark brown and cinnamon-colored hair, quite long on some parts, that on the head standing in a shock and growing close to the eyes like a digger's Indian's. As I looked, he threw his head back and whistled again, and then stopped, and then grasped a stick from the fire. This he swung around until the fire on the end had gone out, then he repeated the maneuver. I was dumb, almost, and could only look. 15 minutes I sat and watched him as he whistled and scattered my fire about. I could easily have put a bullet through his head, but why should I kill him? Having amused himself, apparently, as he desired with my fire, he started to go, and having gone a short distance, he returned and was joined by another, a female, unmistakably, when they both turned and walked past me, within 20 yards of where I sat, and disappeared in the brush. I could not have had a better opportunity for observing them, as they were unconscious of my presence. Their only object in visiting my camp seemed to have been to amuse themselves with swinging lighted sticks around. I have heard the story many times since then, and it has often raised an incredulous smile. But I have met 1 person who has seen the mysterious creatures, and a dozen who have come across their tracks at various places between here and Pacheco Pass. Alright, so there you have it. What did you guys think about that encounter? 1870s. To me, these old-time accounts carry a little bit more weight. Why would they make these stories up? What would they have to gain? The only thing that would happen to these folks back then is people would make fun of them. Think about that. There was no internet. There was no YouTube. There was none of that. Just a few newspapers. And why would they put that information out to be public, to be made fun of, if it wasn't really true? So the news I have for you here at the end of the video is I'm going to start a new series about Native American legends with these creatures. And I'm going to go all around the country in different regions and go ahead and give you guys different legends from the Native Americans. Like I said before, if you guys know anything about my channel, the old time accounts and the Native American accounts really hold a lot of weight with me. Why would the Native Americans for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years have these stories and make them up? That's where we're going to leave it. If you guys have an encounter you want me to make a video of, or if you just want to share it with somebody, just send it to willstarbigfoot@aol.com. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and always remember, where there is a Willstar, there is definitely a way. And we will talk to you guys later. Take care.